You just pressed play on the Last Breath Hunt Cast, home of the Huntroversy. We're here to entertain, educate, and engage. And in case you didn't know, you only live once. But if you do it right, once is enough. Don't waste it. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to episode number 51 of the Last Breath Hunt Cast. I am Grant. Who are you, guy across from me?
Good morning. It's Garrett.
And today, we are going to be covering a great topic, and it's something that we've been doing over the course of the last, 10 years. Remember that original scrape that we made in the bottom with the freeze-dried sack of
Gravedigger when it came in a bag.
It just came out, yeah. We're going to talk about mock scrapes today and how we think you can create a perfect mock scrape. But before we do, and before we get started on that topic, we wanted to remind you guys about Carbon TV. So on Carbon TV, we were nominated for 3 Carbon Awards. So if you guys could go to carbontv.com and vote for us, that would be awesome and really help us out a ton. The categories that we were nominated for, there was 3 of them. One was Best in Hunting, Best Moment, and Best Rope-a-dope Moment. So Best in Hunting, that was when Matt and Jesse killed Phantom. Best Moment, that was when Matt and Jesse killed Uh-Oh. Both off the ground, both drop tine deer, averaging about 174 inches between the two of them. And Best Rope-a-dope Moment, that was when Garrett and I killed Geronimo after Garrett had missed him with his bow the first time. So those 3 categories, if you guys could go and vote for us on those, and if you are interested in watching any of those 3 hunts on YouTube, I would say those are our 3 best hunts, bar none, straight up. I think they're pretty outstanding. But our second thing, and this is the most important thing of the whole podcast today, so if you want to listen to what we say right now and then shut it off, okay, but we need you to make sure you hear this one. So, on Friday, which is 5 days from now, in the Last Breath Inner Circle, that is our Facebook group that you created, we're hosting the launch party digitally.
Correct. Unfortunately, because we cannot host it physically this year. We could have, but there was extreme restrictions, and unfortunately, we get it. The Adler's been amazing. Rick over there has been phenomenal to work with. We've pushed this back twice now, and to push it back any further into the early fall would then start infringing on some of our hunts and our deadlines to launch on platforms and networks already. And like I said, just given the restrictions and the liability issues, if we were to kind of turn a blind eye, we couldn't do it. I mean, and everything else has been canceled. We were the last event at the Adler to cancel. They don't have anything until mid-October, you know? And I mean, it's a big bummer, but we're trying to do what we can with what we got. So we're going to showcase it there at the Inner Circle. 7:00 is when it starts. And yeah, I mean, it's going to be not quite the same atmosphere. We can't throw bush lights out through Facebook, but we still will have a good time. We're going to give stuff away. We're going to show incredible footage.
Yep, and that's, again, Friday, July 31st. So for the people living in the central time zone, that's kind of the Midwest area there, that will be 7 p.m. For those of you guys on the East Coast, that will be 8 p.m. For those of you in Mountain West time, the Mountain time zone, that'll be 5. And for those of you guys on the West Coast, Mountain time will be 6 and West Coast will be 5. So, and also for those of you guys without Spotify, iTunes, etc., you can now stream our podcast every Monday on YouTube. Anyways, how to make a perfect mock drape. That's what we're talking about today. So, the first question I have for us to talk about here is when to start one, because that's pretty highly debatable.
It is.
Some people have started them now, you know?
Right. There are guys that start them some people will even tell you they do them year round or so on and so forth. I mean, I don't know. We've done a whole concoction of different ways, and I feel like the last 5 years is when we've really kind of found our stride and consistently we videotape it. It's proof, right?
Yeah.
That we're being effective with these things. I think at this time, in that mid-summer, late June to early August, is not when you start them, but it's when you plan them. You know, literally our Last Breath Live that we just shot, and we talk about it, revisit this. Even though we're working on food plots, we're still kind of thinking about where these scrapes are going to be, especially if it's a new farm or a new piece. That's when you really got to figure it out, because some of our mock scrapes now are almost annual, if you will. We have a couple spots that we know we want to put them there. But right now is when you start planting them, and the reason being is you need to make sure that your foliage underneath those low-hanging branches is trimmed and cut. And we've even gone as far as this early, like, a good month out before you want to put your scents and attractants in there. You can chemically kill that ground there, because that bare dirt is really a huge trigger, to expose it. So if you don't want to hit it with Roundup or glyphosate or something to just kill that foliage, make sure you just whack it down and keep it short.
Yeah.
Because it's going to be so much harder to rake a mock scrape in, if you got grasses or weeds that are knee high. I don't think we've ever started one this early.
No.
We usually wait until around right when the deer start shedding their velvet is when we try to put them out, because that's when a chemical change happens. That's when the deer is transitioning. I mean, you can physically see it, right? They're removing their velvet and they're going from a summer deer starting to go into a fall deer. And even though they'll still be pretty, bachelored up, if you will, for a little while when they're hardhorn, but once those bigger deer strip their velvet, I mean, it is a change. It's almost like an overnight thing. You'll see those groups break up and dissipate. You'll start finding different deer on your cameras as they begin to shift from that summer range into okay,
This is my turf now.
Yep, exactly. And I think you'll find that if you can get them started early, it's like classical conditioning. It's like Pavlov dogs, right?
Yep.
And the biggest thing to note is that when you get those challenge scrapes that start popping up next to your mock scrapes, that's when you really got them hooked. So, I mean, talking about timing, when would you say is the magic day? It's like around that second weekend in September is when we usually do it.
Yep. I would say like you said, think about where you want to position them. Think about the difference between a community scrape, which we'll get into this in a little bit later, but think of the difference between a community scrape and like a territorial scrape line, a scrape line.
Right.
And where those are going to be set up. And lots of times, if you guys have hunted a farm for any time that you've been hunting for multi-year stints of time, that typically the deer that made them the last year, like if you've got a deer that you passed, like if that was 3 and now he's going to be 4, or 4 are going to be 5 or whatever, that he'll typically run that same scrape line again. So you already have a good idea of where the scrape line is going to be. And your community scrape, that's going to be in the position where a bunch of deer use it all the time. So a place where that's kind of in a high visibility area. But I agree with you, getting back to your original question. I think that a couple weeks before October comes for us, like a couple weeks before season,
Right.
I would say is a good time to start really putting them in and pissing them off.
Yeah. I mean, and you'll find that the demeanor, I think, changes too as the date elongates or the season goes on, because those early September deer that visit the scrapes, they're just doing it because they smell it. They're investigating it, right? Not going to see much working of the licking branches or pawing of the ground, but they're going to have their face in those branches, sniffing and smelling, and then they'll come back again because they're curious. They want to, what is this? It's enticing.
Yeah.
And if you set your cameras on video mode, which is a huge thing that we advocate, over your scrapes, run it on video mode. There is so much more information you can get from your camera than a photo. But you'll watch their body language change as that season kind of progresses, as the testosterone levels start to rise, their necks are filling out. Like, you'll watch that deer that came in and just sniffed it in September, around like the 15th of October, all of a sudden he's in there just pawing it up, and you can just see he's fired up.
Yep.
He's beating the branches with his antlers. He's getting on his back legs, reaching as high as he can get. And I mean, that's when you know, okay, things are starting to heat up, and you're just waiting, locked, cocked, and ready for that first cold front.
Yep. I think the positioning of like where it could be in like two categories. Like, where do you set the mock scrape under the branch itself, and where like visually do you put a tree where you want a mock scrape in your farm? And I think it depends on, I guess, the kind of conditions you're hunting.
Yeah.
So if you're hunting only woods, you're going to have to pick a place in the woods. You're not going to be able to choose like a field edge or choose like a transitional area or something like that with more high visibility.
So I think we'll get into like the construction of a mock scrape, and as we've done this, and as I've gotten into trapping, it's very, very similar to trapping, I feel like, because if you go set like a foothold trap just randomly, your success rate's going to be way lower. But if you set a foothold trap like and you construct it in the way that you would think like a coyote would hide a bone or something, your success rate goes through the roof. So same thing with a mock scrape. Even though you have a low-hanging branch somewhere, it doesn't mean it's automatically going to be very productive. You may draw things in because of the scent and the ability to draw them in there, but you got to think about where have you seen scrapes, natural ones, throughout your piece or anywhere that you've hunted. You talk about timber. Like I think more times than not, the scrapes that we found in timber are along like pronounced trails.
Yep.
Because the deer's going to make it where he can get to it semi-easy, and B, he wants other people to find it.
Yep.
It's like a billboard, if you will. You're not going to put a billboard on a back alley most times. You're going to put it on a highway.
Yep.
And
that's a good analogy.
With scrapes, it's the same thing. On field edges, I think one thing that's really important is to make sure that your mock scrape is somewhere where there's an ability for a challenge scrape. And we've done a good job about putting this out. If you pick the only low-hanging branch on your field edge that's out there, yes, again, I'm not telling you it can't work, but if you groom a couple, like on each side of it, of low-hanging branches, you leave them alone, more times than not, you'll either have one or both. I mean, we've had it happen before. Like we'll start a mock scrape and then boom, one on the east, one on the west, one across the field. Like all of a sudden they start popping up, and it's all because of the first one you started. But we groomed and manicured these other areas. So like with Lucky, perfect example, right? I mean, he had really 3 of his own scrapes around that mock scrape that you killed him over.
Yep.
The one that he worked minutes before you killed him.
Yep.
The one across, which is about 70 yards away, and then the one in the back corner, which is maybe 120 yards away. That guy would just round rosy that stuff, man.
Yep.
So I think there's a couple important tips there. When you make your mock scrape, obviously you got to make sure that it's in a good area itself, and you got to treat it like a trap. And what I mean by that is you got to really paint the picture. And we have a video that's on YouTube. It's pretty informational about that, and we'll get into like the trees, right? You want to talk about good trees versus not good trees? Yep.
So one of the things that we do religiously is we'll go and find a tree that we want to put a mock scrape in. Now, what I'm about to say, I don't want it to be confused, so I'm going to go as slow as I can to make it make sense. And that is, if you have a tree that you're like, wow, there has got to be a mock scrape in this tree, but it's a shitty tree. And what do I mean by a shitty tree? Maybe it has thorns on it. Maybe it loses its leaves very quickly. Then don't let that stop you. So what we do is we will go out and we'll cut a branch, usually like a quarter sized in diameter to a dime size in diameter. And we'll take that branch
of a specific
tree. And usually it's an oak tree that we pick. Oak. And that's because they hold their leaves longer than any other tree.
Correct.
So whereas that mock scrape that you want to put whereas the tree that your mock scrape you want to put it under might lose its leaves quickly, if you go and you just get 2 zip ties, you can tie that white oak branch onto the mock scrape tree that you want to be there. So that way it's always got leaves. You can always put licking branch gel on it. You can always have that added factor that the deer is not just like whipping himself in the face when he's trying to rake the licking branch or anything like that with his antlers, because I think we would both agree that deer prefer trees with leaves on them when they're raking and swinging and posturing up and doing their thing.
So that's a good thing to note on, is the fact that you can create the spots. It doesn't have to be a natural one. It doesn't have to be that low-hanging branch. It's about chest high, 5 feet off the ground, if you will, that's going to work. You can, like you said, you can create it. A couple trees that I would recommend to avoid is, like you said, locust trees or hedge trees. They have thorns, and they're really, I mean, would you want to stick your face in something that's going to
hedge tree is very brittle, too. They're not going to get that whipping
they're
effect.
Strong. Yeah,
they're really strong.
And then like a walnut tree. Again, there's some farms that are just loaded with walnuts, and they're not bad trees for the timber, but they're very pungent. If you've ever like took a walnut leaf and like rubbed it in your hands, it's very, very strong. And a deer doesn't want to smell that. He's trying to smell everything else, all the eye glands and the ear glands and all the facial glands that a deer is using on the licking branches and in the scrapes. So we try to, mulberry trees are some of our best trees we've hung them in. And oftentimes they're found on field edges because they're really kind of shit trees.
Right.
Hackberry trees is another good one. American black cherry. But note, all these trees that we just said do lose their leaves early. So can you start one there with stuff? Yes, especially in like September when they have the leaves. But when they start to shed them, that white oak, which the difference between a red oak and a white oak, the leaves on a red are pointed, and then on a white oak, they'll be lobed. So most people know what an oak leaf looks like, but pointed leaves are red, lobed are white. And Quercus albus, which is white oak, they hold their leaves. So some different subspecies don't ever shed them, actually. They purge them in the spring. So you're going to have way better opportunity with holding onto that branch when you do it. What about height? That's a big thing.
Yep. So just keep in mind, especially if you are a man listening to this podcast, it's typically, 5'7", 5'8", 5'9" over.
Plus, right.
Plus, right? That your mock scrape, you have to think about how tall a deer is. So don't put it at head height for you. Then that will force a deer to get on its back legs, and you do not want that on every single tree. So I typically do one about where my sternum is, like my sternum, my nipples, whatever you want to call it. Mid to upper chest is where Garrett and I usually put them, right at that 5 foot mark. So that way when a deer comes up, he can leisurely sniff the linking branch, and he doesn't have to go onto his back feet unless he wants to. So give him the option. If he wants to, then let him have that. Let him have that out, but make sure it's at the right height. And about that 5 foot mark, that's a pretty good height for 2, 3, 4, 2 through 9-year-old bucks, right? About the same height.
And again, it's just that trapping analogy, like you were painting that picture of realism. When you've seen scrapes before, and you're like, when you're visually looking, you're like, oh, there's a broken branch. I find myself oftentimes it's like right where I can reach and touch it. I don't ever reach up usually to like look or inspect. Not that you want to be fingering the licking branches, but think about that, and for us naturally, this is a comfortable working area for humans. It's like right about your eye height, head height.
Yep.
But not for deer. And then let's talk about the palate, the scrape itself, right?
Yep.
Do not force it directly under the branches. Again, it's adding that sense of realism, because a deer, when he's standing there, if you think about his front paws in the scrape, his head sticks in front of him, right? So his feet will be in the scrape, and he can still work the branches. I've seen more times than not where guys will kind of cheat him under the branch, like almost like the scent drips into it, And this is a big thing too. Scent drippers do work. They do.
Yep.
But you got to think where that's going. It's almost way underneath the tree. So there's nothing wrong with them. We've used them in the past, and they're nice because it does put scent out there for you without being there. But your palate, if you will, you need to have that probably, 16, 18 inches
be away, not towards the trunk, away from the trunk, because you got to feel when a deer is hunkering down to take a leak in the scrape and actually quote unquote lay his scent down and mark it. His haunches in the front. If they're pawing the dirt of the scrape, then his pee is going to be about 18 foot and a half behind that.
Yeah.
Right? So keep that in mind, that you don't necessarily have to be cheating it under and towards the trunk of the tree when you're making it.
Right.
The size. So that kind of depends on the type of scrape that you want to create. A community scrape, typically those are started for you, and that's just...
Yeah, I don't think we ever try to really duplicate one of those.
Right. And that's just a natural thing that you're like, oh, I'm hunting my food plot tonight. Oh, a doe peed right there. Another doe peed right there. A doe and a fawn peed right there. A little buck peed right there. A nice buck peed right there. And everybody is just peeing right there because that is like the whorehouse of the deer woods. Everybody's going to and from it and checking it, and they want to know who is all kind of living in their community.
Right. And those are like, typically the ones that you hear guys say, man, this scrape was the size of a car hood. They're not quite that big. They're substantially larger just because of the number of deer that go and work it.
Yes.
And it's really hard to duplicate that because you have to have so many different scents to be able to put in there. I think when we try to make them, we're more trying to make that dominance or that territory style of scrape to really trigger a buck that's we're stepping on his toes in his core area.
Yep.
And so we've covered the tree, and we've given the sweet rule and trick of like the white oak branch. It's revolutionary. Like literally, guys, we have hung a white oak branch, put a mock scrape out there, and like the next day had our shooter in there just beating it up. We've talked about the height, which is a really important one. We've talked about the location of the palate of the scrape, which is another element to the realism. And then I guess we can get into like what we use to create it, right? So we've constructed it. Now what do we use to bring them in?
Let's talk about how we make it really quick.
Okay,
I think we haven't completely visited that, and I want everybody that's listening to be like, I'm going to go do this, and I don't want you to have any questions.
Yep.
And if you do have a question, though, then let us know.
Open
Reach
book
out.
policy. We're here to help.
But I wanted this to just be thorough. So you have a tree that you want to put a scrape under. You've picked it out, and you're like, this is the one. I saw deer using it last year. It's gone cold, but I want to reactivate it. What are you going to do? What tools are you going to bring with you?
So again, preconceiving this scrape, I'm given this information as if the foliage is like 4 inches or less tall, right? So you've already groomed it. You hit it with a weed whip, or you brush hogged underneath the branches, whatever. A rake or a hoe, or everybody's got one. You can use them really well, or a weed whacker works really, really well too. But what you're trying to do is just clean that area underneath there about, I would say I'd usually make them like a foot wide, like deep, if you will, and then probably like 16 to 18 inches long. So it's like it's an oval, if you will. It's not a perfect circle. And that's like where I start with, and I let the deer grow it as they want to. And you're just, with a rake or a hoe, you're simply removing all of that grass and foliage that's underneath there. And it's important that you want to pull it away just like a normal deer would. Again, it's kind of like, I keep using that trapping analogy. When you trap, you try to make it as realistic as possible. So you're wanting to pull it away and then make sure that grass and stuff, I try to leave it on what I would call the front of the scrape, right? So if a deer is going to come in there and pawing it backwards, so that's the motion that you want to rake it. And now sometimes you might have to go side to side or something to get them under, out or done. Mm-hmm. But a weed whacker is also, it's an easy tool, because you can literally, if anybody's ever used one and you get a little too deep or whatever, you just pretty much turn it to dirt. Yep. So that's another simple way, if you're doing a couple of them or a lot of them, or it's hot out, or you want to, use modern technology to your advantage, you can just beat the pulp out of the grass down to dirt with a weed whacker. But once you have your pallet there, you're trying to remove, again, all the grasses and foliage, and the hoe is usually nice to get some of those thicker, deeper rooted stems. Yep. And once you expose the soil, that's it. You don't need to turn it into powder. You don't need to rototill it. Don't need to do anything special. But those simple tools, I think, is all you really need to get it working. Yeah.
So you talked about the size there, and I think we should get into now, because we've been hunting and filming our adventures for better part of about a decade and a half now, and I think that the coolest thing that we've been learning is the difference in scrapes. So let's go for a challenge scrape first, because I think that's the most unique and one of the things that's the most interesting about our interaction with Pretty Boy. So let's go ahead and review Pretty Boy's interaction and what he did that was, that challenge scrape, and why it was little and in the location that it was in.
Sure. So we'll go over the three scrapes, I guess, that we kind of classify internally here. We're no wildlife biologists. This is just
shit we made up that we think is kind of true.
Yeah. We've talked about the community scrape. Those are ones that are typically year after year in the same spot. You'll get a ton of deer on there. Yep. And those are really crucial and deadly. And you should note those. And again, you'll find them to pop up every single year, no matter what deer you harvest or not. Those are really important, but hard to duplicate. And you just need to make note of those. Then we'll get into a territory scrape. And these are usually made and ran specifically by a singular buck. Now, other deer will visit them because it's a scrape, and deer are, community animals. But you'll find that you'll have consistently a single deer that'll come in there more than any other one. And the territory scrape is what we seem to find on the edge of a buck's bedroom or a buck's home core area. And those are really some of the most deadly ones. Those are the ones that I think we try to duplicate and we try to hunt over more than anything.
Yep.
Because that's a deer that's using that scrape line to kind of define his area. It's like a dog that pees on the corner of his property, It's like that kind of scrape. And he'll check those religiously because he's making his rounds to make sure, okay, this is my area. Nobody news here. And if there is, that's when he gets mad.
Yep.
Then we have what we call like a dominance or like a challenge scrape. And these are the ones that are tricky because you'll see one in the woods or on the field. It's like, oh, there's a scrape.
There's a new one right there.
Right. And these are typically like they're not really pronounced. You can tell a deer hasn't spent a lot of time there, but the ground is pawed up and maybe the branches are worked a little bit. And we find is that these are scrapes that a deer makes out of aggression. Like he enters a field or maybe he sees another buck and he'll start posturing up. It's getting to be the right time. He's not quite ready to just go at it, but he wants to be like, hey man, I'm here and I'm tough. And we've seen him do it. Like, especially some younger deers will do this, like that 3, maybe even 4-year-old range where they're getting their Wheaties. They don't quite feel like Superman yet.
Yeah.
And they'll see another buck in the field and, he'll look all tough and rough and then he'll walk over and
posture up, start sidestepping, and then a couple 100 yards away, maybe as soon as they see each other, they'll stop.
Yep.
And just start working the ground.
Yep. And that's more like hey, I'm a big bad motherfucker. Like,
yep.
You don't want none of this. Even though he really doesn't probably want you to come over here. He's just, I don't know how what would the equivalent to like a guy doing it, right? Like, seeing somebody else and then like moving something heavy.
I got one. It's like when if you guys have ever been to the gym before, it's like going and getting a good pump and then walking past a chick on your way to the drinking fountain.
Yeah. Yep.
That's kind of what it is. And it's like, I'm here. What's up?
And again, you can't really tell because some territory scrapes start out that way, but I think we've found that when a territory scrape is made, it's pretty pronounced. Mm-hmm. Like a deer, a buck will spend a good amount of time there to make it, you know? But those challenge scrapes, like you said with Pretty Boy last year, we rattled him in. He was all fired up. He couldn't see the buck that came in, but he's just, he knew he was in the right spot. He was like 25 yards from our tree, and he was wanting to fight. He was wanting to see something, and he didn't, so he was pissed off, and he just pawed the ground and worked it up, and like no other deer ever went there, and he didn't even pee in it, But he was just roughing and toughing and acting like a Billy Badass because he knew there was deer in there fighting, and he wanted to show like, I'm macho too, So a challenge scrape, don't overlook them because that means there's a deer in that area that's fired up, but don't think, oh man, this area's tore up. We're right in his bedroom, because sometimes it's not the case. Correct. Like I said, I think those territory scrapes, which I think are the most deadly scrapes, licking branches are broke, the ground is pawed up, you can smell it. Typically, it's pungent because he's been investing time there. He's depositing scent and working the ground, and like he's there probably every day.
Yep. And I think the cool thing to note about a territory scrape, as I've been thinking about it, is the reason that a deer is going to spend more time at one is because he wants to make sure that nobody enters the perimeter of the area that he's carving out. And I have an example of that I'm going to share with you here of 2 dominant bucks that we hunted. So 2 5-year-old deer. One named Lucky, the one that we killed would have been 2 archery seasons ago, Garrett and I, in October, and a deer named Johnsonville. So Lucky's core area, it kind of carved out about 12 acres that we believe was where he was bedding. Johnsonville's core area was to the east of that, and it kind of ran north and south as well, but it never broke into Lucky's area. And there was a field that on the west side of the field, and we're not talking about a large ag field here, we're talking about 4 acres. And on the west side of the field, we had Lucky scrapes. And on those scrapes, we got trail camera pictures and photos, videos of Lucky, right? Carving out those 2.
And Johnsonville would come over, but he would never go in.
Yep, he would never go in. He would come over and check it out, but he would never go in. And on the east side of the field, there was 2 Johnsonville scrapes. On the east side of the field, same thing. Lucky was in that area, but he would never go and mess with Johnsonville scrapes. So that's pretty interesting how effective that those 2 dominant mature deer were at carving out their areas. And it's kind of like a territory scrape or a scrape line. It's kind of like the Great Wall of China. Have you ever seen a video like on the History Channel or something like that? It's like they're trying to wall off an area, and think of their scrape as that little sentry post, like the tower on the Great Wall of China where all the archers and people sit and get ready for war. It's kind of like if you've ever played Risk, you're trying to set up a perimeter around, a certain country or area that you're trying to hold. So that's kind of the purpose of that. But like Garrett said, don't be tricked by like a challenger dominant scrape. Those are effective tools, so that way okay, there's a deer in the area that's fired up, so I should go hunt in there, or this gets me really excited to be hunting in this location. Like, yeah, my plan worked, I guessed right.
Right. And I think it's important to note, though, that, that once, like, peak rut hits, those territory scrapes go dead.
Yep.
And, I mean, that's when you do get the intermingling, and that's when you get those iconic videos of, like, big bucks fighting. It's because, well, the gloves are off, and now it's, you know, I don't care about your line. I'm looking for the next hot doe.
Yep.
So when we capitalize on these scrapes, it's important to talk about time of year, I think, because that's something we haven't quite talked about in depth yet. And we talk about when we start them, you know, that 8th through the 12th of September is really when we're wanting to start putting them out. But when we really start hunting them is going to be that pre-rut phase that a lot of people talk about. Those big deer are starting to get on daylight on your cameras, or you're starting to get ready for the rut. But we just let these mock scrapes do their job. We're trying not to get in there very much once October hits, because we don't want to pester them too much, those deer. As again, we've created these probably within at least a couple hundred yards of most big deer's bedding areas that we're trying to figure out. And this is where a cellular camera can come into play quite critically.
Big time.
Because it allows you to monitor those and get that data without infringing on, like I said, that area. But really what we're doing is we're finding what deer are using it with what frequency. Once it's a deer that's on our hit list and we note that they're there every day, multiple times a day, or even every other day, like that means they're very close and they're very active in that scrape. And then this is when you watch the Weather Channel every day, and you're waiting for that first big shift of weather, that first real reason that's going to instinctively make those deer move earlier or later than normal.
Yep.
And so I would say probably one of the most lethal days for us in October is like that 16th to 20th range.
Mm-hmm.
It's not Halloween, because that's like really when you're getting into the rut, is that late October. We're talking like third quarter October, you know? Yep. And that's when we get that weather shift. I mean, it's happened almost every time that we've done it.
Yep.
And even if that deer hasn't daylighted yet, we just know that all we need is that weather front, that shift, and that, you know, that right concoction to get them to go. So you're starting this almost a month and a half in advance, and you're planting a little seed that's going to mature and grow, and you just got to wait for it to happen and take hold. Because when was Lucky, we can look at
Lucky on October 1st, Josh on October 9th, and
Lucky wasn't the first.
21st,
right.
20, did I say first?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, whoops. Nope, just kidding. I wish. That'd been really cool.
Right.
Opening day. Not that good.
No, not yet.
So Lucky on the 21st of October, Josh on October 9th, and then last year we did the same exact freaking thing to Harold. I just fucked up. I should have shot him lower, but it is what it is.
Hindsight's what that was the 17th. It was the week before Rutcation, wasn't it?
It was
week and a half before
Yep.
Rutcation, because
Yeah,
we
so it would
started
have been
our
like
Rutcation in the middle.
that would have
of the
been
week.
like the 19th, 20th, 21st
Somewhere
kind of
in
time
there.
frame.
Yep.
So it's like, you know, a deer is a ticking time bomb, and they're just waiting, like you said, to explode and go full swing rut. And that October, like 15th, lots of people call it, you know, the lull typically. But that time, if you've got a cold front within that time and you can do what we're talking about and establish a pattern on a deer with a mock scrape, especially if they're hitting it like really close to daylight. So I think the thing that I've learned the most on trail cameras over the course of the last like 12, 15 years of putting them out is that if you really analyze every video picture that you get, if you've got a deer that is within the first hour of daylight and you've got a decent sized property, you know, 40 to a couple hundred acres.
Well, it doesn't even matter how big your property is.
Yeah, it just means he's really close. And if you can get that cold front to bump him over the edge, I mean, that's exactly what we did to Harold last year. It was about 70, 70, 70, 70 like clockwork. And then boop, on a Friday, it dropped down to a daytime high of like 52. And that shift of about 20 degrees, we rattled. And I know lots of people don't like rattling that early in October.
But the way we rattle, I mean, maybe we should talk about that too, because it's a different type of like rattling sequence, you know?
Yeah.
But you're I mean, here come a little buck, and we're like, oh, yeah. And then Grant's like, dude, big deer right behind us. I thought he was messing with me. And no, he was not.
Yeah. I wish we would have had a shooting lane cut on that side.
Yeah.
That sucks.
Hindsight's always 2020, right? If you should have tried to squeeze one
I
through
don't
there.
know if
he was 9 yards.
I know.
And he just beat the shit out of that tree behind us. And then he went around and hit the mock scrape that we had made.
Yep. He was coming right to it.
Literally, our mulch trees were
just
popping
total
off.
deer manipulation.
Yeah.
That's exactly what we went in there and planned to do. I just messed it up. Which you guys will see the video of that. Archery truly is a game of inches, guys. But yeah, let's go into the rattle thing really quick. We can touch on that and then keep moving on the mock scrape. Got a couple more things, so go for it.
Yep. So recap, we've talked about the trees to use. White oak branch is a big thing. Height, size of the scrape, placement of the pallet, understanding that you need to leave some other areas for them to make their own challenge or territory scrapes on each side. Now you've been monitoring it. Let's say you took it to the next step and you've got a cellular cam on there and you've got a deer that you've marked as a hit lister and he's consistent, right? Boom, 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 boom.
Every night.
And
every other night.
Whatever, right?
A pattern.
And so now you know, he's close. I think I know where he's bedding. I've got a good way to get into my stand without him seeing me. And the weather front's moving in, right? You see it. You called into work. It's a Thursday. You're like, I can't come in. I got to leave at noon today or whatever. And you're hunting. What we'll do is just to push him right over the edge a little bit. Is we'll try to simulate a deer in that scrape, because you got to think this guy has been coming in here and he's like, man, somebody has been pissing in this scrape and I haven't found him yet. And that's why I'm coming back every night, because I want to know who he is.
There's an intruder, and
right.
I'm trying to catch the burglar here.
Right. So you got to think like this deer, like he's coming back, he's pissed off, and you've got your scent in there, and he's like, somebody's here and I haven't seen him yet. I want to know who it is. So you slip in and you're quiet, and maybe you wait. Just to see if he does show up. That weather changes enough, which it has happened for us.
Yep.
But you get impatient, like me, because I'm the most impatient hunter ever. And so now you want to duplicate a deer in the scrape. Not necessarily like a big buck just smashing and banging. This isn't like a November 5th type of rattle. Mm-hmm. This is just enough to say, somebody's in there. Get him out of his bed.
So if he's bedded within a couple 100 yards of you, and it's a fairly quiet night, it'll work. He'll hear it.
So we usually start by just beating branches in the tree and rubbing on a tree with the antlers, just to kind of give the facade that a deer's in there alone. So if he's close enough, he'll hear that. Break some branches, shake some trees, and and it's kind of unsettling, because you do everything you can to get in there and be unseen and unnoticed. But now you kind of have to have that sense of realism. So just like a deer, if he would be in a scrape, maybe throw out a couple grunts, grab a branch, shake it, break a couple twigs. Take your rattling antlers and rub them on the bark and on the tree, and do this for 90 seconds, and then be quiet and wait and see if that's enough to get him to come. And sometimes it does work. It's happened. He'll come in. If not, maybe he's just a little bit further and he can't quite hear that. Then we'll just tickle him a little bit. Just like, how kind of deer push each other around in early season. They're not real mean or mad. But, kind
of like a spar.
A 2-year-old comes up to a 4-year-old, and the 4-year-old's like, hey, man, what are you doing? He's like, I want to, come on.
Come on, let's scrap, man.
So that's what we're trying to do. We're locking them up and just kind of and just hitting them together lightly, but we're not really churning and burning, And we'll let that marinate for 60 to 90 seconds, maybe 2 minutes while we're doing that, and then quiet. Because after that sequence for Lucky, I bet, was it 3 minutes he was there?
3 minutes, I would say. After Harold, it was 8 minutes, I think.
We had a little buck come immediately. Mm-hmm. He shot up out of the bedding area and right around.
Harold was smarter though. He went to our downwind side. Luckily though, we were high up enough, and he was on the bottom of a bluff. So that's a totally different hunt cast all in of itself, and that's how to get away with certain things. But we found that if you hang on the top of a bluff, and the side that you want to shoot on is on the upwind side, but the downwind side, the side that a deer is going to try to circle down, is lower in elevation from you, that sometimes you can get away with a not so great wind and hunt it.
Right.
And it'll just blow right over top of them. So
yeah. And he even cut our footsteps.
Yep.
So, but we're scent Nazis, man. We're crazy about that shit.
That's true. What kind of scents? So now we're going to get into
what we use.
So there's lots of different things. There's about 4 or 5 things that we use in total. And let's go ahead and go for the stuff that is on the ground first.
Well, I mean,
which is a few things. So when people think of traditional scent, they're thinking of, shrink wrapped in plastic or something like that, like a liquid scent. But that I do not think is our best product that we use. On the ground itself, it's a product by Code Blue called Gravedigger. So do you want to explain what Gravedigger is and when you apply it to a scrape?
So we apply it at the date of creation. And there's two different kinds. We almost only use Scrape Mate. They do make an estrus blend, but we just don't use that very often, especially given the time of year that we're trying to hunt. An estrus blend of product in September just doesn't quite add up.
Right.
So we use a Scrape Mate blend, and it's a scent infused soil. So what they've done is they've taken soil, they've dried it in an oven, and essentially baked all impurities out of it, and then they infuse it with deer urine. A couple nice things that this does. It's not really messy because it's a powder, it's dried. It's in it looks like a Lowry shaker bottle. So don't.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Don't put it in your spice rack. And the nice thing about it is it has the ability to, once it gets wet, it gets activated. It's still very pungent. Like dry, you break the can and you can smell it.
It just looks like potting soil. It's a Lowry's bottle of potting soil.
But when it gets wet and saturated, it just really amplifies it. Like most things, when you wet it or heat it, it's gonna reactivate or rejuice. So when we make the mock scrape, we create the palette, and we'll usually try to take like the edge of the rake or the end of a hoe, and we'll dig just a small little pocket, if you will, or like a little bowl. Maybe it's 3 inches around and maybe a couple inches deep. Not much, but enough to fill it. We want to fill it up with probably like a half a cup or 3/4 of a cup of this dirt, and then the rest we'll put all across the entire palette. And so what you have is a lot of area that's going to give a strong scent, and then you kind of have that core area that's a little ball of this compact and really concentrated scent, if you will. And when a deer goes and works it up, when he paws it, he's just flinging that back into the scrape, or when he uses it, or even after a rainfall, that scent is even more amplified. So that's, I would say, 9 times out of 10 what we use. We love this stuff. We get it by the case.
And it's called, again, Gravedigger by Code Blue.
Yeah, and it works, man. I mean, I wouldn't be telling you something that we put on there that doesn't. I mean, I wholeheartedly use this.
That's my favorite product that they make, I think.
Yeah. I mean, when it comes to big buck killing, 100%.
It's lethal as hell.
Yeah, I mean, if Code Blue, you told me I had to take one product, it would probably be that.
Yep.
I mean, their decode, well, I love that too.
I like washing my clothes and stuff with that.
Yeah, but I mean, as far, like their scent line, without a doubt, that's the way to go. And then they have a couple different things that we really use to give the full facade, that real effect.
Yep.
Talking about the ground game still is Calming Zone. So they came out with this a little while ago, a couple of years ago, and it's like it's a deer dander scent. So very similar to a company called like Evercalm.
Yep.
But what they'll do is what Calming Zone does is just smells like a real deer. And we'll put this on our boots and our shoes, again, just to kind of add that last little element, like a real deer was here. And a little bit goes a long way. You don't need to bake it into the bottom of your shoes and have it just mashed in there. Just
think about it as a giant tube of chapstick. That's like a 2-inch tube of chapstick. It's about 4 or 5 inches tall, and it's you can take it up into the tree with you. You can rub it on a tree as a cover scent. You can put it on your boots as a ground cover scent, and you can apply it to a licking branch as well to give you that added bit of realism. And so we use that, and then our actual scents that we use. So there's a big difference between doe urine and estrus. And like Garrett said, in September or October, you probably do not want to use estrus. You could start thinking about using it on the 25th and on in October. At least we're just specifically talking for everybody in Illinois. But when you get to the end of that, pre-rut phase, when you're going to start to hit the seeking phase, when deer are just going to be running around like crazy, like what we call the bow hunter's rut, then you could start applying that estrus. But before then, you might want to be a little bit leery. So we do put doe pee in scrapes at certain points in time, like a community scrape in which we're trying to jostle the area. And that's, again, our scrapes that multiple deer use, not just a big buck. At the very start of what we believe to be the rut, and when we've got enough evidence to say, okay, it's time to go, then you can apply estrus to a territory scrape, and the deer that you're hunting will come back and check because they're like, okay, a hot doe is ready to roll, and she knows that I'm here, and she knows that she wants me to find her. So
Right.
So that's an effective time to apply estrus, and then you've just got buck urine. So you can apply buck urine to reactivate on what we're talking about, like the Code Blue Gravedigger.
Mm-hmm.
They've just got buck urine that they have, and you can just, it comes in like a little 3 to, sometimes there's like a 3-ounce bottle, and sometimes there's like a 5,
4
6,
ounce.
4.
It's
yeah,
2 and 4.
2 and 4. So we got a little one and a big one, and you can apply that to just, do the same thing that
Amplify
we're
it.
talking about.
Right.
And that's like on the way past it to your stand, just boop. Kind of like when we're checking trail cameras in and out. That's pretty much when we check our cams that are not mobile during deer season.
Yep, and that's a perfect time to go freshen them. I think that's something else we should note too. Like, we don't scrimp when we put the scent in there. Especially when you're creating it, like, you don't want to just put a little bit of scent in there. And that's something to when you think about, like, when a deer pees, it's a lot of fluid, man. Like, it's not just not a little dribble. And yes, you're like, man, this bottle's, it's $8 or $10 and I'm just burning it. But ask yourself how much your hitless buck is worth,
Yeah.
So you may put $30 or $40 into this mock scrape, but if he's standing there in it in October 18, 20, whatever, and you get a chance at him, you're like, that's money well spent.
Yeah.
So I think we start them, and we usually try to freshen them with Gravedigger, and if we don't, it's good to note, because you pack one of those little bottles in and then dump it right in there on the way in or out, or when you're checking cameras. Great. I didn't think about that. It's something I kind of overlooked, take for granted.
Yeah.
Now to the branches.
Yeah, to the branches.
We use really 2 big things. Rack rub, they've had out for a very long time. It's a gel. It comes with it almost looks like the same applicator that you use, like PVC glue.
Yeah.
If anybody, or
like a little
primer.
OD primer.
Yeah.
Purple primer. That shit smells so good. That's one of my favorite smells on
primer.
Earth. Purple OD purple
yeah,
primer.
Yeah. So the rack rub is actually, it smells sweet, and it's kind of like the consistency of syrup. A little bit goes a long way. And we've said this before, especially on the licking branches and those scents, when a deer walks up and he puts his scent in there, you got to note that it's not the same amount that he's putting on the palate. Like, he's not peeing on it. It's from his facial glands, his ear glands, his antler glands. So it's a little bit. So we'll take that preorbital gland, or not the preorbital, the rack rub, and we'll cover the whole swab, and then we'll almost like clean it off, if you will. And we're just wanting a little bit of residual effects. We're putting it on, 8 to 10 of the branches, making sure your hands don't touch it. And then the other thing that we use that Code Blue came out with a little while ago was the preorbital gland. So this is in the same exact canister as Code Blue, same exact style, but the preorbital gland is a synthetic scent that they've developed to mimic the preorbital gland, which is going to be right there at the tip of the eyes. And I guarantee you guys have watched a trail camera video, whether it's your own or somebody else's, where you look like the deer literally pokes himself in the eye with a stick. He'll close his eye and he'll work it in there. And those are really strong glands, so it doesn't take a lot of scent to mimic that. But you can take this stick and you can just shove it on the tip of it, that deodorant stick, and just rub it on the very tips of those sticks, like you're mimicking how that deer would do it. And now you have that full facade, because rack rub is designed to mimic like the antler scent around their pedicles. So you can use a little bit more of that, because obviously if the deer is working, he's rubbing it and it's moving back and forth on the twigs. But that preorbital gland, again, it's right there at the tear ducts of those deer's face, and then just put it on there. And again, we talk about investment. Each of those products are like $10, $12.
Yeah.
They should last you almost all season, depending on how many scrapes you have and how frequently you use them.
Yeah, we're going to take a look at those products in just a second, and we're going to show you what we're talking about. But I think the one thing to note here is, if you're going to do this, then don't be scared that this is going to slow your hunt down. The process of time that you and I are at a scrape with our backpack, with all of our hunting pack, right? It's 2 minutes and done. It's, all right, hand me the Code Blue. I refresh in the scrape that we made, I hand you the rack rub. Reapply a little bit. I hand you the preorbital gland. Right on the end. On to the next one. On our way to the stand. It is probably a less than 1 minute thing now that I think about
Right.
it. It's worth it. And if you can do it and be, religious about doing it, you can really add that realistic effect rather than just saying, oh, there's a scrape here. I'm going to dump some pee on the ground, which there's nothing wrong with that. But, if you're going to create a mock scrape from start, you want the whole package deal. Lessons that we've learned from mock scrapes. This is a good one.
They work.
They work. They work really, really well. And I actually wanted to bring this up. This is pretty crazy. If you guys
from
are,
last year?
Yeah, if you guys are actually watching this, then I don't know what minute.
40 of you.
I don't know what minute mark this is at, but this is pretty cool. So last year, Garrett and I, and this was right when Garrett, Jeff, Logan, and Jesse went to hunt antelope in Colorado, and this is the biggest lesson that I've learned. So here's Garrett and I, and we are in the side-by-side, and here we go. We've got it's October 6th, so you can see the timestamp, and it's 11:30, so it's midday. We're putting out our mock scrapes, and we're refreshing them. As you can see here, we have our white oak branch.
I'm almost certain you probably have
Right.
Look, we just put that on. If you look in the back of the Ranger, we have more that we're putting on.
Right, yep. And so if you're looking for this timestamp, I'm not sure what it is because I haven't put the video up on YouTube yet, but this is towards the end of the video, obviously, so you can see our Ranger here, October 6th at 11:30, and we put our rack rub on the branch.
Yep. Also note, look at what we're wearing here. We have rubber boots on that we've sprayed and cleaned. These are hunting boots.
Yep.
So we're in the Ranger. We're leaving as little ground scent as possible. We've put the branch on, and Grant's putting the rack rub on it.
Yep. And then, okay, rack rub is closed.
Grave digger.
There's the grave digger. All right, so then we get to the point where we're like, all right. And then, oh yeah, this would have been the first picture of the sequence.
Yep.
When you were actually zip tying the branch on there.
Yep.
Which is hilarious. There's the actual branch. And then, here we go. We're going to go ahead and check out. Remember, the timestamp on that was October 6th, midday. And now, here we go. We're going to our folder here. Oops. Sorry about that.
There's Marshall.
4 fucking o'clock. 4 hours later.
5-ish, yeah. But
and
still.
there is a hitless deer that's a neighbor killed him. I believe scored him at like 161
as like a pretty much an 8.
Pretty much an 8 with a few extras, and he's in there, right? And we're just gonna go ahead and go through the sequence of pictures. So it's 4 o'clock, October 6th. And look, he came back at 6:35 on October 6th again. 2 hours later, again at 7:45 p.m. on October 6th, again at 8:30. So you can tell, like, this is just a deer.
We triggered him.
This is just a deer. Right, so there he is, walking away. There's a video. All right, it's a little blurry. Must have had fog that night.
Yeah.
But there he is, and now he's coming in to work the scrape.
Again the next morning.
And then that's on the 7th, and this is in the morning. And then, boom, in the afternoon. And again, this is daylight during deer season, early season. Like, if you kill a deer 1 week into season, I'm freaking jumping for joy, But this is, again, daylight on October 7th, right at dusk, October 10th. And we definitely triggered him. And here's another case. So on that same day.
The cool thing about this, so the mock scrape we'd started probably, I would say, 3 weeks before this. And we hadn't put on the new branch.
Following morning at 9:30 a.m.
That's
again,
Harold.
Daylighting. This is the deer that I shot that we'll show you the video of in about a month from now. So there he is on the licking branch. There he is at 7. There he is at 9. There he comes at 3 o'clock p.m. during the daylight. Our stand is in that tree right off the camera frame. And, like those 2 days for us, this is one of the biggest lessons that I've learned. And that is, if you're going to do this, then you're going to be wanting to be around in case you do trigger a chain reaction like we did
there. So the cool thing about that, like that stand was placed right in between 2 different bedding areas. So there's a finger of corn that you can see in. We had brush hogged and mowed all that out. And we knew we wanted to have a scrape there. This was a newer farm for us, and we had figured out that there was a nice big warm season grassy patch, large waterway with some shrub trees there. And then on the other side was a great big timber finger. And and we knew there were different deer in there just because we had trail cameras, and we had put both of them on the hit list already.
Yep.
But and Marshall was in that scrape before that, so that's not the first time we got pictures of Marshall in there. He had been only at night, but then when we added that white oak and daylight. We hit it with some more of that Gravedigger.
3 days in a row.
Holy
daylight.
crap! And that was when I was in Colorado,
Yep.
and I was begging you. I'm like, man, get in the stand. He's like, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it without a camera. I'm like, oh. But I don't know how much more we can prove that. I mean, it's we went in, and that scrape was already made. And we had a mobile on it, so we were monitoring it. And it's like, we got that picture that afternoon. It's like, oh, shit. Oh, crap.
Yeah, and that was the day before he went. And then all weekend, it just tore me up. Yeah, it was the wrong wind, and I don't know.
So,
I'm glad we didn't go in there, and I'm glad we didn't mess anything up. But so Code Blue, what we're talking about. So the products that we use, if you go down to codebluescents.com and you click on products, and you go to scents and you click on Code Blue, there's a ton of them here. So here we go. We've used foaming doe and buck urine in the past. Both are a good product. It's kind of like shaving cream, but here's the biggie that we want you guys to check out. So this is Gravedigger Scrape Mate. It's like the third thing on their product list here. You see you can get a bottle of it for $15.
But if you stick around, we've got a 20% coupon plus free shipping.
Yep. So that stuff is what we activate all of our scrapes with, and I believe one of the reasons that we've been so successful, just because it's a really cool product. And you can do 2 scrapes with that. If you want to be
disclosure, though, we do one. We dump the whole, we full dick it.
Yep.
Yes, you can stretch it out if you need to, but when starting it, especially, I would use a full bottle.
Yep.
Freshening it, yeah, you can stretch it out 2 or 3 scrapes if you want, but I mean, to start it, I think it's important. Like, we do use that whole bottle.
Yep. And then, like I said, here they make the doe estrus version as well. You can use this, but like I said, don't use this like too early. Don't jump the gun on that. Rack rub. So here's the rack rub right here. You can buy it for $11. So with our code, you can get it for $7, and a little bit goes a long way with this. So if you get one of these little jugs, like I think we used like 1 or 2 last year. It's not like we're just throwing it on crazy. It's like
you don't want it dripping off.
No. And then they have tarsal gland gel,
which it's really potent, man. I mean, if you smell it, it's like, woo, it's like buck urine on steroids. If you do decide to use it, which we've used it before, it goes in the palate, not on the branches, not very much.
Yep.
So I think the other 2, Calming Zone, if you go up, it's actually under their cover.
Yep.
So there's the liquid scrape mate. That's a good one to talk about. And the buck urine.
Scrape mate, buck urine. And there's a bunch of stuff that you can buy on here. But if you go back to
Cover Sense.
Yep.
That's where the Calming Zone is.
There it is, Calming Zone.
And that's another product that lasts a long time. Like a majority of these products, even though they're around that like $10 to $15 mark, they last almost all season.
Calming Zone lasts all season. Rack Rub lasts all season. Tarsal Gland Scent lasts all season. The only thing that we're using hot and heavy is
the buck urine, scrape mate, and Gravedigger.
Mm-hmm.
And then so the orbital gland is under synthetics.
Yep.
Down, 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 right there.
Preorbital gland. So this is the thing that Garrett was talking about, like right in the corner of their eye there, that they will go in and they'll nudge the tree.
So doing some quick math, you've got like I think it was $12 for rack rub.
Yep. And so we can add this to cart, and then we can go back to Code Blue, and then we can add a thing of Gravedigger to the cart. We can add.
I would just do Gravedigger, Orbital, and Rack Rub.
Rack Rub and Orbital.
That's it.
So we got it. So there's 3 things on our cart here. So if we go to checkout and go to view and edit cart, then right now we're sitting at. Come on, baby.
$36
bucks. So then you can go to discount codes here, and this is where you can use it. So this is all capital letters, and you can go LB. Let me make sure I have this right.
I think it's LBTV 20 off, if I remember right. We're going to post this in the inner circle, too, just so you guys know.
Yep. So this is LB, the number 20, OFF capital CB for Code Blue. And then you can click on Apply Coupon, and there you can get 20% off and free shipping. So that takes you down to $28 with no shipping.
So that's
not
yeah,
too bad.
because it's
and
free.
And that's enough to make one scrape really hard, and then you can get the Gravedigger for like with our coupon code anyway. You can get it for like $11 right to your door. And
It's
in
cheaper
our
than
opinion,
Amazon.
Yeah, it's cheaper than Amazon. So it's pretty nice to use, and enough on that. So now that you know it works,
And I really don't want any of the listeners or the viewers of this to think that we're like hard selling it. I mean, we
It
use
just
it,
kicks
man.
ass, I don't know.
But we're happy that we can give you guys a discount code that makes it affordable, to be able to do this. Because I think realistically, that there for $30, you can 100% start a scrape and freshen it really if you want to. I mean, you can add to the palette, but the ability to freshen your licking branches there, I mean, $30, you have the ability to start your own mock scrape and freshen the licking branches all year round.
Yep.
So anyway.
Yeah, and typically it's like priority rate shipped, so it'll be there between 2 and
5 days,
5
depending
days,
where you're
yeah.
at. Ships out of Georgia or
Yep.
Alabama, depending which warehouse.
So again, that discount code is all uppercase, but it's LB as in last breath, the number 20 off OFF CB for code blue. So that'll get you 20% off and free shipping. And that kind of brings us to the end here. Are there any other lessons or things you want to talk about as it pertains to mock scrapes, or are we good?
No. The last thing, maybe just to keep in mind when you're creating a mock scrape is sometimes a good mock scrape doesn't always yield you a good shot opportunity. Just keep that in mind. I mean, if you're trying to really create a mock scrape that's going to become lethal, just process the whole thing.
The location of where you're going to put it and where you think he's coming from.
And your stand, right? I mean, sometimes you got a great low hanging branch, but it's so darn thick and nasty. It's like I can't even shoot it.
Yeah.
But that's it. Other than that, hopefully this helps you guys become more lethal this fall. I mean, we use it every year. I mean, for the last 3 years running, we've killed deer over them.
Yeah.
And then
killed deer over them, and then for the we've. Before it was cool, like right when it initially came out, you got that from Farm King. Like I think it was the deer season of like 2000 and
milk chocolate. I remember
2009 or 2010, and you got this thing. I was like, "What the hell is that?" And you go, "It's called Gravedigger," and it came in like a
vacuum
packed, freeze dried kind of package in it. It looks like one of those high country backpack meals. Kind of, if you've ever been like backcountry camping, that's what it used to look like before they went to the bottle, and we've been using that stuff
way
since.
before we even were working with them.
Yeah. So, like I said, we're going to write that code down and put it in the last breath inner circle. We've got a really big announcement to make on a really sweet discount code. We've been battling back and forth with the company, and first they were like 10%, and we were like, nope, it's got to be more than that. It's got to be more skin in the game. And then they were like 15. Nope. It's got to be more than that. 20. Nope. It's got to be more than that. So we got a 25% discount code off of a really fucking cool items website
And
company.
we're giving that out at the launch party.
And we're giving that out on Friday at the launch party. So that's pretty cool as well. And that brings us to our next segment, the Would You Rather. I have three of them today for you. Ready for number one?
Mm-hmm.
Would you rather hunt over a mock scrape in October or have two 2-year-old bucks fighting 80 yards from you during a hunt in the rut?
Mock scrape. Because the way that we hunt we're hunting a scrape for a deer.
Sure.
I mean, I love hunting the
I was
rut.
more talking for the natural noise factor and the live decoy, but
Yeah.
wow, that was quick. I thought you would have.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong, that would be nice, and you would probably attract in some deer, but the thing that I love about the way that we hunt with these mock scrape, it's like this. I mean, it could be another deer come in.
Could
There's
be.
always that chance, but more times than not, it's like,
Yeah, it's
this scrape, this stand for this deer,
yeah.
let's go get him.
It's never like let's put a mock scrape in and hope to get lucky. It's like let's put this mock scrape in, and if we see him tonight, that's where he'll be.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of cool. So number 2, would you rather hunt prairie dogs or raccoons?
Coons, shining them.
Why?
It's fun, man. I mean, prairie dog would be cool because you're like set up 200 yards away and it's like action packed and whatever. But just like I don't know, coon hunting's it's definitely like a little rougher.
I like going and killing coons too because they eat our corn and stuff.
They're so damn damaging, man. Yeah. I would rather shine coon, shoot them.
Okay, the last one I guess is going to be your hard one then. Would you rather get a new truck every year till you die, free, or shoot a buck out of your top 3 targets every other year? I know, because you know what you can do with that truck when you get a new one every year? You can sell that sucker with about 12,000 miles on it for a real pretty penny.
I'm taking the truck. I can still shoot other deer, right?
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I'm taking
You can
the
shoot
truck.
number 4.
Well, I'm not saying I can't. You're saying
Right.
I can't shoot any one of my top 3? It's always got to be
It's every other year you get a buck in your top 3.
guaranteed.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah. Hypothetically, yeah. Sure.
No, I'd take the truck. I'd even take the truck if you didn't give me a truck payment. I just got a new one.
Right.
Like 2020, 2021, 2022. Just like even exchange, no paper. Just
Yeah. Here you go. Okay, cool. President doing business.
Yep.
After about 3 or 4 trucks worth, you have enough for a pretty sick down payment on a farm too.
Yeah, that's if I could sell them. I'm just
Right,
talking.
that's if you can sell them.
I'd take this deal even if it was like
That's hard.
You don't get to sell them. You just.
I'm changing it. What if I say you can shoot a deer out of your top 3 every year, not every other? It becomes harder.
Guaranteed on the wall every year. Top 3, one of them. What you're saying?
Take that?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what you'd take?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. We're going to go ahead and wrap this up then. Those were good answers. The launch party. So,
again,
5 days. Friday. Technically 4 because it's Monday. 7 p.m. Central Time. So,
Last
if
Breath
you're
Inner
out east,
Circle.
8 p.m. Mountain West Time, 6. West Coast, 5 p.m. Last Breath Inner Circle. That's our Facebook group, so you will have to go to Facebook to watch it. We're going to give away some prizes in there and talk about our films a little bit. And again, we're going to start that at 7 o'clock. So you'll want to be in there, tuning in. And every Thursday, all year long, we are releasing a Throwback Thursday episode. So make sure you guys check that out. Every Wednesday, Last Breath Live is coming at you. So we've never done this before, and we're trying to get more, at least to the video side of content, rolled out. And we're going to be doing that every Wednesday. So when deer season comes, and we've got a couple big announcements that we're going to make on some hunts that we're going on this fall. But this deer season, you're definitely going to want to tune into those every Wednesday. This Wednesday, we got a video coming out. That is when you and I went and hung our first round of trail cameras this week, and why we hung them in certain places, what we're expecting to get on camera, and, just kind of paint the big picture of when, why, and how we hung our trail cameras where we did. And that's what we did last weekend. So it's up to date, and it's what we're doing to just try to become better hunters, and we're showing you what we're doing, taking you along on the way. So thank you again for listening to the Last Breath Huntcast. We really appreciate it. If you'd like to stay linked into what we're doing on a daily basis, check us out on social. And, become a member of the Inner Circle so you don't miss the launch party on Friday. Again, 7 p.m., July 31st, Friday. 4 days.
Bye-bye.
Is that it?
I think so.
All right. We'll see you guys next time. And we'll see you on Friday.
Mm-hmm.